Hello and welcome to the ins and outs of live streaming. My name is Chantel Hills, and today we have our special guest, Doug Hewson from the Doug Hewson YT YouTube channel. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. It's good to be here, talking about live video and everything else, whatever we end up talking about.
I'm
looking forward to
it. We could go anywhere. We could go anywhere. Doug, for people watching or catching the replay, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? We're of a certain age, like Justin last week, where YouTube wasn't our goal to get started. Like, how did you end up here?
That's a great question. It depends if you want the long version or the short version.
Whichever you would like to give, honestly.
Well, I'm going to go with the mid version, which is
Okay.
I always had an interest in video. It goes back to probably the 90s, where I was doing live video in a church environment. So I was doing multi-camera shoots and stuff, but none of that was going out on the internet because the internet wasn't really a thing back in the early 90s. There was like bulletin boards. You could use dial-up internet to connect. So we were just recording to like videotape. And then a little bit later, sort of closer to the late 90s and into the early 2000s, like DVD and maybe mini DV tapes and stuff like that. And so I had experience in like live switching, so it was like a live video environment, but like in an auditorium with an audience and a stage and lots of lights and microphones. So we're all like one component, the video component of like there's a sound desk and a lighting desk and a whole like a live production in a theater, you could say. So it was in that sort of environment that I sort of had some experience in video content. And so I was doing that. I did that for probably 10 years on and off.
Wow.
In various aspects, starting from really old school cameras that were analog, 3CCD, sort of Sony, and I think they were Sony cameras. Yeah, I believe they were Sony cameras, and big, chunky broadcast cables and stuff running into really primitive, by our standards, equipment.
Yeah.
And then I sort of stopped doing that for a while, so there was a bit of a lull there, probably a good maybe 10 years, where I didn't really do as much of that, and I was busy with growing a family and full-time job and different things like that. So probably when it comes to YouTube, I didn't get interested in YouTube itself until about sort of the mid 2010s, I guess, 2013, 2014. And it was mainly, like, obviously people were watching YouTube casually even back then. And that was, I was interested in the content at the time. My kids were getting into Minecraft, and I was interested in Minecraft. They got me hooked on it. Yeah. And so I was interested in watching a lot of Minecraft content. And so my first foray into actually making content for YouTube or for the internet was having a crack at gaming. A lot of people do, because gaming is
gaming is the gateway drug to YouTube.
Gaming is the gateway drug. So it was out of that and saying, hey, I reckon I could make a video like these guys on, these popular Minecraft channels. I think I could do something similar. And so I would start to sort of make pre-recorded content and obviously live stream to places like, not so much Twitch back then, but it was a site called Beam, which became Mixer, which is now gone. It doesn't exist anymore because
Mixer's gone.
I think Facebook bought them out a few years ago.
Until 2016, was it?
Yeah. And so I did that because they had like what was called faster than light, so it was like really low latency, so you didn't have a lot of delay between you in the broadcast and it hitting the people on their channels or on their iPads or their computers, wherever they're watching. Yeah. So I dabbled in that for a bit, but because I was dabbling in that got me sort of inducted into the whole YouTube creator space and understanding that there's actually a process and there's people like Nick Nimmin and that who are teaching how to grow a YouTube channel. I didn't even know there was a thing. There was people who taught that. I didn't know that was something people can do. And so I dabbled in another channel where I did some dash cam videos. because I had a car with a GoPro type action
Yeah.
cam at the time, and then later I got a
I
dash
actually love
cam.
watching those dash cam videos.
Yeah,
They're
that's
a
right. And I
guilty
was really into
pleasure.
watching. I got into watching
Yeah.
those, and then I did some content. So I started a channel. I think I got up to like 400 or 500 subscribers. It's still out there. I haven't uploaded
Yeah.
it to it for probably 3 or 4 years now. So that was sort of like the second flurry into live video, and then it was about it must have been about 2016, maybe 2017.
Yeah.
I started watching people like Nick Nimmin and Brian G. Johnson, I think in particular, and maybe a few others like Tim Schmoyer on video creators. And I really got hooked on the whole understanding YouTube and the whole education space.
Yeah.
And
because that's something really important to remember is that like that 2006 to 2014, there was no one really prominent teaching how to do YouTube on YouTube. Everybody who came through then just fumbled through, whereas now we've got these amazing YouTube educators in there just going, hey, look, that used to work. It doesn't work anymore. Now this works. So, yeah.
So I decided I'd actually do a channel where I would lean on my experience in tech. Yeah. So, because I've done that live environment, so I know how to use a camera. I know I wasn't like really in the lighting sphere, but I had some basic concepts on how to do lighting. Yeah. I knew because I did some live streaming with the Minecraft content. I knew, a bit about microphones that, everybody was using like a Blue Yeti or something back then. And so I'd lean on sort of what microphone could I get, and probably started with some USB mics and then upgraded over time to, something a little bit more sophisticated like a Rode Pod mic. But jumping into that, and that's what my main channel now, Doug Hewson YT, that is sort of where sort of the love of the work I was doing in live video and interest and sort of enjoying the live streaming experience when I was doing the Minecraft, and then honing that in on some of the creator aspects like how do I make a thumbnail? My thumbnails when I started were atrocious. I was using GIMP and trying to do graphic design where I had no experience in graphic design. And different things like that. And I started editing. I moved from iMovie to Final Cut Pro at about that same time. And so my very first video on my channel was some whiz-bang idea I had to do something in Final Cut Pro. And it's the only time it's still there. It's the only time I've ever done content on Final Cut.
Really?
I've used
the first and last Final Cut video.
I've used like screenshots of Final Cut when I've talked about editing and stuff in a couple of videos more recently, but I've never touched on that. So it was like sort of finding my feet through a bit of time with my channel. I talked about Canva for doing thumbnails, and I talked about Anchor for doing podcasts, and I was just very broad and all over the place in what I was trying to do. And then at the same time, because I was
working out what you wanted to do.
Well, that's right, because I didn't really know. I thought you could do all these different things at the time. I wasn't as focused on the whole and understanding the whole niching down. And so and that's something I think we're continually working on, by the way. So I kept working on that, and then in amongst that, I was doing like little clips where something would happen with on YouTube, a new thing was launched, or they the big monetization changes in February. What year was that? 2018, I think. Where they changed the partner program where you needed 4,000.
That was after Apocalypse 1. Yeah.
It was after the Logan Paul dead body thing and all that crazy stuff.
I think the Logan Paul one was the Adpocalypse 2. I think the Adpocalypse 1 was where they realized there were ads showing on like I think it was someone's Nazi videos or something like that, and one of the like Coca-Cola or someone were like, hell no.
Yeah.
Like, we want to choose more. And I think Adpocalypse 1 came in, I think might have been I want to say 2007 for Adpocalypse 1 for some reason, like April 2007. Anyway, sorry, hijacked.
It was back there.
Yeah, but they've made so many changes to all of the
Yeah.
rules all the time that
Yeah.
it is a constant learning curve. You were saying that, you know, when you very first started, you were doing sort of a broader range of content. You were still working on your thumbnails, but that's where everybody starts. Like, we all trying
Yeah.
to work out, what do I love making video on? You don't have to start a channel, like your very first channel, going, I'm going to be in this 100% niche. You don't know what you're going to like creating, and it's totally okay to fumble and dabble and see what you like and then niche it in and keep going. But I think it's when people are like, I'm going to get monetized within 3 months, and they're still in their dabbling phase. It's like, well, that's not going to work, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
took me 18 months to get in the YouTube partner program from when I started my main channel. So yeah, it took time, and that didn't really concern me because those changes happened, I think, about a year into my channel.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, I had to, like, a lot of people were like panicking, but it's like, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and you know, it's gonna happen. It's going to happen because you know, my subscribers are growing. I'm publishing videos. I'm getting watch time, so it'll happen eventually. And amongst that, I was doing some live streams, and I'm trying to remember exactly what I was doing then, but I think I was somewhat inspired by, because this is like probably at least a year into the year and a half, you know, probably past that point of monetization or around that time.
Yeah.
And then there was people like Viper popping up who were doing these big collaborative live streams, like panel live streams on using what's that Google product that YouTube was linked to at the time? Google Hangouts. That's what it was.
Yep.
Google Hangouts was the big thing, and you could bring a bunch of people in and they could join. You couldn't really do too much with the look and feel, but you could bring in all these people. It was like a Zoom call without using Zoom, and you could broadcast it live. So I think I started doing some of those, and I'd bring in random creators. I know back at that time, Creator Chaos was doing some stuff where, you know, some people were sort of hanging around the sort of, you know, Nick Dimon streams and Brian G. Johnson streams, sort of got together and we're doing sort of a bit of a take on just chewing the fat and talking about YouTube and creative stuff and anything else that come to mind, even if it was like talking about movies or whatever. And they would get out and do that sort of thing. So at that time, we're sort of dabbling in different types of live streaming formats.
Yeah.
And so I'd jump in on some of those streams with them, and I would, you know, do my own where we'd talk about YouTube stuff. I think that's what we're talking about. I can't even remember what I used to talk about on these.
I was going to
live
ask,
streams.
what was your first live streams about? Like,
I have to go back and look.
I haven't dug back far enough to get to the first ones.
Yeah, I need to check. I'll dive in. Not now, of course, but
yes,
I need to refresh my mind because my channel's been. I just had my channel last week. I think hit the 5-year anniversary of my channel. That YouTube reminded me of in the dashboard. Which so thanks YouTube for that.
I can't remember the live streams I did 5 years ago.
Yeah. So
I just remember where I was. Excuse me, like where my studio was. Oh, I've gone super croaky. Sorry.
So over time, I've basically my content has stayed around that creator space. It's sort of morphed and sort of gone in a little bit of different directions. And then some things that started landing on my channel and I paid attention to. One of them was mobile live streaming. And so I did a lot of content on Streamlabs Mobile, and I was surprised that there wasn't more content out there. And I knew that Nick Dimon had done a video on it previous to me, and I think Dee had done something on it as well. And I did some different things around that, showing people. I did started off with, you know, the basic how to use it tutorial that you would do, and different things. I had a whole bunch, and they started getting traction. People were actually finding those. I was ranking on Google and in YouTube search, and so, you know, my videos getting recommended there and in search. And I guess I didn't back then I wasn't really paying attention to browse and suggested so much. It was like, because I
Because
know
search was
that
the
my,
thing.
yeah,
Oh,
because I know my content is how-to content, so that is very much leans on search to a certain extent.
yeah.
And I wasn't sort of thinking about the whole browse and suggested experience back then, because it was like search, keep it was a little bit more like you make sure you use the right keywords, title, description in your tags, all that stuff. Back then,
Yeah,
that was sort of the norm as
it
the
was.
way to go. So there was that content, and then that would sort of flurry out into maybe covering little bits and pieces like side apps like Prism Live Studio, which is an alternative app to use for live streaming.
Yeah.
Did a couple on those, um, and then
Because
into
like
some
we
other.
look at
Yep.
we
No,
look
there you
at
go.
like people streaming like us, like we're sitting at a desk, we've got our laptops open, but
Yeah.
there is actually a whole other world for mobile live streaming. It's just that little bit trickier because you can't control your environment quite
Yeah.
as well. Um, when it comes to live streaming, do you find that being able to control your environment, like, like we've got our sound treatments up, we've got our lighting how we want it, all that sort of thing. How do you find like mobile live streaming compared to sort of what we're doing here?
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. What I find is there's probably two camps for mobile live streaming that come to mind straight away. One is
Yeah.
the sort of live on the spot IRL stuff, which you don't see a lot of, but people do it.
Yeah.
Where they could be out on the street doing like a street tour is a good example.
Yeah.
They could be like at the beach or something, hanging out. Hey, I'm at this conference and I'm just going to do a live cross. I think I even did one of those when I was at Vid Summit in 2019. I might have jumped on my phone and did a quick 10, 15-minute live stream from Vid Summit. And that was
Yeah.
mobile first. The other side of mobile live streaming is a lot of gamers want to live stream their mobile games.
Oh,
But
okay.
they don't want to have to hook up their mobile phone to their computer, or they don't have a computer to
Yeah.
do that. And so a lot of my viewers on those Streamlabs videos in particular, Streamlabs is really known as a live streaming platform, particularly with gamers. And
Yeah.
so they wanted to know, well, how can I do all these high tech stuff that like you can do in OBS and Streamlabs on
Yeah. But
desktop? How can I
without,
do all that on my phone?
yeah.
And the
Oh
phone
gosh.
was very much limited. All the apps that they provide you, even Streamlabs, is limited as to what you can do. There's limited,
Yeah.
but they did have like basic overlays and different things like that. Pull your like your scrolling chat up and different things, so they could do that. But then there was limitations with platforms like iOS on iPhone and iPad compared to, say, an Android device. There might be some
Yeah.
limitations on streaming a game. It was very clunky, particularly on the iPhone for such a long time. It still is to a certain extent. And
Do you think
so
that's got something to do with the fact that Google owns Android?
I think Android are probably a little bit more open because it is more open source in a sense that
Yeah.
it has more opportunity, and they allow more things in the apps that publish through the App Store. In addition to, you can sideload apps on Android, so you can,
Yeah.
if you're an app developer, you could build something that maybe the Google Play Store wouldn't accept, but you could sell
Yeah,
it
you can
directly
still
from your
get it out
website
there.
or give it out for
Yeah.
free with ads or something, and
Mm.
and provide extra functionality. Whereas if it's on iOS or Apple, everything has to go through Apple. To get
Yeah.
it on the iPhone as an app, it has to go through the Apple
It
Store,
has
so it
to
has to
go
meet their
through the App
rules
Store. Yeah.
and use all their proprietary technology on their phones, like the different development kits.
Yeah.
So the development kit for streaming and screen broadcasting is fairly limited. Even now, you could say it's limited compared to, say, what we can do on a Mac or PC.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
it's getting
it's
better.
also good that it doesn't actually limit so much, it stops, if that makes sense. Like, it's nice that even if you don't have a laptop, you're not totally restricted from the live streaming sort of field. You still get to
Yeah.
do it, but just with some limitations.
Yeah, and you can get very sophisticated. I think you can do a really solid job at live streaming from a mobile device, because I don't think you need all the bells and whistles. Like, you can even do interviews like this, like we're doing now.
Absolutely. StreamYard
because
allows for mobile.
exactly. So you don't need to have, and they're not even using an app. They're just in the browser. They're just in Safari or Chrome or whatever you happen to be using on an Android or an iPhone. So being able to do that is, hey, if you can do it on your phone, then that sort of opens up possibility.
There's no barrier
of not
to
being,
entry, really. Most people have a phone.
That's it. It's lowering the barrier entry, and you can do it wherever you are. You don't have to be in a studio with a bunch of monitors and some sort of powerful PC with a GPU and being able to, with decent internet connection. Well, you still need the internet connection, but you're looking. Say, oh, okay, I need this, I need that. And that becomes like, oh, I need to get a boom arm. I need to get a decent audio interface and. Oh, and I need a monitor for my game and a monitor for my live stream.
It becomes this massive list, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it becomes expensive too. The amount of money I've spent on.
I know.
My setup over the years
I
just
don't have half
upgrading.
as much gear as you do. But that's the thing to remember, as you just said, over the years upgrading. When you first started, you didn't have all the bells and whistles. You got started with what you had. And I think that's something that we as creators need to remember is you don't need to go out and spend $5,000 to get set up for your first live stream. As a matter of fact, I recommend not doing that, because what if you hate live streaming? What if it's not for you and you've got all this stuff that you don't really need for any other purpose in your videos except for to live stream? I personally like to have a pretty background. Lots of people don't. They're like, you don't need to do that. But it's like, I need it for me, for me to feel comfortable.
That's it. You got to have. I think your background can reflect your personality to a certain extent, or you're either going for personality or you're going for like a professional look, depending on what your content's about.
Absolutely.
Like for me, I got your typical like on this side.
Yeah, you've got your sound.
I got my sort of like my soundproofing board, but that's just there. Even though there's just like a wood wall behind it, and it is providing some audio thing, it's there for looks. It's the blue and the black checkered, just for the looks, and like some cheap fairy lights I've thrown in. I can change the color of those anytime, and then some basic black backdrop, and then some accent pieces like the lava lamp. That was just random, Sometimes
Freaky was asking if that was a lava lamp that he saw in the background there.
Yeah. It's just it's not doing a lot of lavering at the moment. It's just sort of sitting there,
it's
glowing.
Not moving. Yeah,
that's right. And and I've got this sort of square shelf bookcase, that you can pick up at any, like IKEA or Kmart or wherever you want to pick it up from. And I've had that like high up in my shot. I've had that low down. I've put stuff on it. I've put lights on it. I've taken lights off it. I've done different things with it just to give it like a look and feel, and just see, just experiment and
play.
And I change it around all the time. Like I move stuff around on it. I've sort of settled into this for the last probably nearly a year or so for this sort of
like
setup.
Due for a switch up.
Yeah, and I tend to do that like once a year. It's usually the middle of the year. It's usually like July, August. Yeah, get a bit of money back from the tax, and then you sort of sink it into some gear. That's what I did. Like last year's, I was like, okay, I'm doing the overhaul. I'm getting the M1 Mac Mini. I'm upgrading. I'm going to go to 2 monitors. I'm going to put my camera in between the 2 monitors. Yeah. At the time, I didn't have a teleprompter, so it was just a camera. I've already had my studio speakers. I got a new desk from IKEA, which originally was going to be the spare desk, because I got a sit-stand desk, which I was using at the time. But I ended up going with this one because my other one was white, and because everything else in my studio is sort of dark. I've got monitors are black, the monitor arms are black, all the lighting poles are black. So I've gone with a dark grey desk.
It didn't match.
That's right, dark grey desk with my mouse mat, or desk mat, I should call it, really, because it covers a fair proportion of the desk.
It's like mine as well.
Having a white sit-stand desk in the middle of all the black sort of just it's very contrasting. So I ended up just switching it out, which actually works really good, because that wasn't the original plan. And I now use my sit-stand desk as like a set for filming like product shots and stuff.
Oh, awesome.
So it's white, and I've got a white background at the moment. I've also got like one of those product boxes that's got the light in it. You can put,
Yeah.
stuff from like up to like a book size in it, not real big.
Yeah.
So if I ever have to do product shots, I've got those.
You've got those there as well.
So over time, that all the upgrades sort of add to what I've got. So now I've got extra lights. I've got my studio lights that are permanently in here, and they're voice controlled.
Yeah.
And then I got my other lights that I used to use here that now been replaced, and are now doing the product shot stuff, sort of on
Yeah.
the other side of my acoustic blanket. And
Yeah.
it sort of grows over time. It grows over
It
time. I didn't
does.
start with that. I started with a 2012 11-inch MacBook Air
Oh,
because I got
wow.
that in 2012
Okay.
before I started doing any YouTube, and
Yeah.
that's why I started doing my editing on that. And I had that all out till 2019. So I had
Oh,
that for
wow.
eight. I had that for 8 years, and that
That
was
had a
my
good run.
that was doing all my content creation, doing my Final Cut, doing my live streams. Like my live streams were chugging a bit, but that was doing my live streams.
Yeah.
It did an admirable job, and then since then I got my MacBook Pro in 2019, and I got my Mac
Mac
Mini
Mini.
for live streaming in this set and
Yeah.
for editing last year.
Yeah.
So that was like I think I got about August last year. So I've had that for since then. So however long that is, I think we're coming out to about
About
9 months,
6 months, 8 months.
6 to 9
Yeah.
months. I don't know. Lose track of time.
This year
Well,
has disappeared. It's nearly
it's,
the end
it's
of
nearly May,
April.
it's nearly May already. So
It's nearly May. Doug, one of the things that you are infamously known for is your moderation skills. So just to totally jump track.
yeah,
I first noticed your name popping up in Nick Nimmons live streams, in D Nimmons live streams, in um, whenever Daniel Patel went live, like all these guys who I sort of, and Justin Brown, of course, who was our guest last week.
yeah,
When I see all these sort of, people that I look up to for my, where I go to for my YouTube information, and you're always in there like helping people and dealing with like the life that is a moderator. It's not just helping people, it's also improving the experience for those people that are following the rules by flicking those that aren't. How did you get into that, and what made you decide that you actually really enjoy it and it's now quite a large task that you do every week? Like if I think about the things that you're involved in, like full-time
yeah.
job, your Hewson YT channel, plus your 2 new channels, plus your Twitch channel that you stream to as well as, life, and now all this moderation stuff on top. What made you decide, yes, I'm going to add this and keep going?
Yeah, the moderation thing just sort of happened. I was helping. I think I'm trying to remember who came first, but I think it might have been Nick Nimmin. I was basically helping people in the chat, because when you're just like a regular person in the chat, you don't have the wrench.
Yeah, no wrench.
I think I was just like helping people answer their questions, or directing traffic. Like, hey, someone's asking, hey, what was that thing that Nick was just talking about? And they say, oh yeah, that was ABC. And so I was just like helping people in the chat. I was just sort of being part of the community, basically.
Yeah.
And
which is always the perfect
this is
place to start when you want to moderate.
I'm assuming what happened was one day Nick just dropped the wrench on me, and then that was my first experience. I don't know if it was him. Honestly, I got a vague memory that it might have even been Brian G. Johnson or him. Now, Brian was live streaming a lot more regularly back then. He was live streaming on, I think, Fridays his time. It was sort of like mountain time in the afternoon. It was like my hour here in Australia. I think it was our Saturday morning, sort of like 6, 7, 8 a.m. It was like early morning. And this is before all the late night stuff that we have going on these days.
Yeah.
And so I get up on a Saturday at Saturday's my day off work, so I'm not working. I could, technically sleep in. But I'd get up and moderate a Brian G. Johnson live stream. He'd stream for an hour, usually, and back then there's a lot of trolls coming in, so you'd be like kicking a lot of people out fairly quickly, and I know Brian didn't have a lot of moderators, so I was like the only one there quite often.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Nick, he had a few moderators at that time that probably aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
And I sort of just like joined the group, and so he had also wrenched a few people that were like his friends and people in the YouTube creator space, people like Daniel Batal and that sort of weren't there then, but people like that even before D came along. So there was like people in that space. I know, like Brian G. Johnson was his moderator, but he was, he comes and goes, so he's not there to moderate. He's just there to, hang out in the community. So there's a lot of people who had the wrench that were just there, come and go, hanging. They had it because they were Nick's friends or Nick's colleagues. And then there was a few others who would be in there regularly. So then we built that relationship with those people over time. And that group of people have changed over time as well.
It does.
Because it has been a few years.
Priorities change, yeah.
And in that time as well, first I think it was Brian on Facebook. In his Facebook, he has a very large a Facebook group called Tube Ritual.
Tube Ritual is huge.
Yeah. And I become a moderator. He asked me if I wanted to be help him moderate with a bunch of other people he put on at the time. And that moderation roster's changed a little bit as well over the time. So it sort of extended from just YouTube into Facebook as well. And for a long time that was probably the only one. But then other creators recognized me doing that. And so if I was hanging out in their streams regularly, they would just add me as a moderator in due course. So then I started moderating for a whole bunch of tech channels because I was in Viper's stream and Travis MCP and who else was around at the time? There's a whole bunch of them, but they were the main ones. So I'll be showing up on these tech channels and being added as a moderator. And then some people that were other people who are hanging in Nick's streams. If they were doing live streaming as well, and I go over there because they're like I got to know them from Nick's streams or what we now know as the Niminati. I would be over there hanging out in their streams because they're friends and they're talking about tech or they're talking about whatever it is,
which is an interest of yours as well. It's not just you're not just over there. Like I think some people join in streams and ask to be made a moderator. Like you've never seen their name before. They jump in. They're like, what do I have to do to become a moderator? And it's just like, what would be your response to that question if someone jumps in and asks that question? Yeah.
And usually what happens is it's like, I've never seen you in this stream before and you want to be a moderator. It's like, I don't even know you. And I know that the person who's streaming probably doesn't know you either. Yeah. So the first thing is to get known, and it's not to say, it's not like you see in some chats where they go see me, call out my name, give me a shout out, and that's sort of their way of getting seen. That's their way of getting seen. That's the wrong way to go about it. I think the right way to go about it is to become a regular person in the chat, participate in the chat, show that you got some responsibility by not like carrying on in the chat or being crude or rude or just being civil. Being helpful is a huge thing. Answering questions and answering them correctly, like you know what you're talking about. So don't sort of just parrot stuff because you've heard it, but make sure that you know that is actually correct. Particularly in the YouTube space, if you're like moderating a YouTube thing or whatever, it's tech. And you don't know anything about, say that's an Apple-based channel, and you don't know anything about Apple or iPhones or Macs or anything, and then you're probably,
I probably would not be a good moderator for someone like, Renee Ritchie, who is all Mac all the time.
Yeah. You got to have a little bit of knowledge.
You got to have knowledge
about the subject that they're talking about. You don't have to be exactly like Renee Ritchie, mate. If I could be like half as what Renee Ritchie knows, that'd be awesome. Nick Nimmin, Daryl Leaves, and so I ended up becoming a moderator on all these channels. But going back to your question, because I'm starting to go off the trail here.
It's all good. It's all good.
If you want to become a moderator, show up every week or every time they stream. Be regular. Never ask to be a moderator. Be extremely helpful. Answer questions. You can overdo it by trying to become the moderator and like copying pasting what the moderator says all the time. Because sometimes as moderators we have preset information we share, like a link or information on how to ask a question or something like that. And then what we find is sometimes people like cut and paste that and start posting that like they're, hey, I want to be a moderator, but I'm not a moderator, but I'm just going to act like a moderator. It can work, but then it can backfire on you because it can come across a little bit.
Especially if they're new and you've never seen them before.
Yeah. If you were like very trusted, like if I knew you and I've hung out with you in these live streams and I know, you know what the deal is and the flow of what the particular streamer's doing, then if you sort of help the moderators, and then that's actually really good if you're being helpful and being and knowing that we know that you know what's going on because you're here every week participating, and then
a regular member of the community.
You get on the streamer's radar because ultimately it's the streamer who has to decide who they want to be a moderator.
That's right.
They have to decide that they trust you enough to give you that wrench.
Yeah.
And it
is a trust issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moderators do have some tools that could, moderators have access to some tools that could make or break some live streams.
Yeah.
Before it disappears off my screen, Leanne's Craft Room has a question for you.
Oh, awesome.
So
excellent.
Once you are a moderator, so you've had to talk about how to become a moderator. Once you have been made a moderator, what are your top 3 tips for being a good moderator? It sort of flows on from your last question.
Get to know the streamer's content back to front. Like not only their live streams, but make sure you're watching all their content regularly so that you can answer questions on behalf of the streamer in the chat where they might be busy or not be able to get to every question. So like they might be doing a tutorial section of their live stream where they're not taking Q&A, but they ask a question here, which may not pop up again later. If you can answer that, because that's like a question like, what is that piece of equipment they're using? Or what is the monitor they got sitting in the back there? Or, whatever the question might be. If you know their content back to front and know their live streams back to front, then you are able to jump in and answer some of those questions that come up in the chat that the streamer may not be able to get to, especially if they've got a lot of traffic coming through the chat.
Or a lot of information to get through as well.
Yeah. Know how the tools work on whatever platform you're on. Obviously, mainly I'm moderating on YouTube, but know how the timeout works. No, obviously the removing the comment just removes the comment. The timeout times out somebody for 5 minutes. Just know what the tools do. That hide user from channel means that no one is ever going to see their comments in the live stream or on videos ever again on that channel. So that's like a big responsibility to totally remove someone from ever having their comments seen ever again, unless the streamer reverses it, of course, and it can happen accidentally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it even happened to me a few weeks ago. Me as a moderator was moderated, and I was hidden from the channel.
Ejected.
I was ejected. That's happened to me twice now as a moderator, accidentally, of course. I wasn't being rude, and I wasn't getting silenced.
Not that time.
So knowing what those do, and knowing that I'm not going to take that tool lightly, that I'm only going to use it when I know this person is trolling or this person is spamming excessively. This person is not here to be part of the community and to participate in the stream. They're just here to cause chaos. So therefore, I'm going to go the nuclear route and remove them from the channel so they can't comment ever again. Yeah. But in most cases, a timeout, 5 minutes sitting out of not commenting, does a job for people who are just like a little bit over eager and do things. I think I've given 2 tips. I need one more tip.
You need one more tip?
I need one more tip. Oh,
do you have one more tip?
This on the spot business. Gee.
I think we're
Those first two tips are
cutting
so
out
good
just
that
a
I'm just
little.
trying to think of what the third one is. It's eluding me. It's eluding me. But yeah,
That's all right. Two amazing tips are two
that first
amazing
that
tips.
first tip encompasses probably a lot of what goes around moderation.
It
Though
did
is
encompass a lot.
just knowing how the streamer works. And the third tip: ask the streamer questions offline, preferably. But
Yes.
if you need to, sort of mention them in the chat to get their attention. But sometimes you might not be sure of something. So if you need to reach out afterwards, make sure that the streamer has some sort of avenue to reach out, whether it's like a messenger or a Twitter DM or whatever it is. That hopefully that streamer, because they've appointed you as a moderator, has opened up an avenue for you to provide
Converse
feedback.
with them.
And
Yeah.
that's what even something I do sometimes for people like Nick, where I'm on their streams all the time, and and that's a stream where I sort of
You're the
sort of
mod
considered
god
like
on that stream,
I'm like
honestly.
like the head, like you're the head moderator. The other moderators in there,
Yeah.
but you're the one that is like doing some additional things in the back end and different things. And so you jump on, and sometimes I'll give Nick some feedback. I was like, oh, you missed a bunch of super chats, so you need to make sure you attend to those. So that's got to try and happen like during the live stream, because you don't want them to not get acknowledged in the live stream.
That's right.
So
They've gone that extra step to do the super chat, so you don't really want to miss them if you can.
So there's that sort of stuff where you got to try and reach out during the stream, and whether you've got a tool for that or whether you just have to do that in the chat to get their attention. And sometimes I'll provide feedback afterwards. So getting feedback from the streamer and giving feedback to the streamer is the next level. If you're like one of those committed moderators, sometimes you say, yeah, there's this person in the chat, and they might not have noticed because they're busy presenting the content. And so that's their job, is to present the content. There might be a window where they're doing Q&A from the chat, so they're focusing on the chat. But there's other parts where they're not seeing what's going on in the chat. So you're dealing with it in the chat, but then you might need to feel that something needs to be mentioned after the stream. And so make sure that you do that. Make sure that you know what the stream is looking for from a moderator in regards to some people aren't real keen on you dropping a heap of links. So you sort of might want to pull back on dropping links unless they say, hey, could you drop that link for me? But some people are like happy with it. So they'll, you can drop the link to what they're talking about. I know Chantel does that really well. I'm not as good as that. Chantel as a moderator does that.
You're focusing on other stuff.
Well, it helps me because
it's like divide and conquer.
on Nick's stream, I've got a whole window in the back end that nobody sees and nobody knows about. It's a tool that's not out there publicly, so it's not a tool that people can use, where I can see a lot of stuff that's happening on the channel, on the live stream, I should say, and I can actually like flag stuff out of the chat and put little stars or flags on them, and say, like I could flag all the super chats that haven't been answered, or different things like that.
That's
and there's
an
like
awesome tool. I love hearing about it. That one's there. Just for clarity, I actually have just recently started helping with some moderation in Nick Nimmons chats, and I've really been enjoying over there. I've learnt a lot from Doug. He is an awesome moderator. Kind and smart, but also like swift with the, it when needs be. And I think that's a really it's an awesome balance to have as a moderator, because you've got to sort of sit there and sometimes, because I'll message Doug in the background and I'll be like, hey, is this guy like doing this, or is he being a smart aleck? Like, because sometimes reading someone's text, it's like reading an email. What was their intended tone? It's really easy to see something like what Freaky Geek does and be like, no, ban. But I know Freaky Geek means it as in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. So it's like Freaky can stay. But if people didn't know that person spoke that way or didn't understand it, it might be very easy for another moderator to come in and be like, time out, ban from channel.
Yeah.
Whereas I tend to follow your lead in that regard, Doug, on Nick's channel. I'll leave things sometimes because I'll be like, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And there'll be other moderators in the same stream who will just come in and start dropping ban hammers on anybody who looks at them the wrong way. And so you got to sort of be careful there. And luckily, most of those, and I could be in a stream and know who might might be inclined to do that. So when they come in, I'm sort of on the lookout to see whether someone's going to trigger them and cause them to get
to
banned.
Trigger them. It's like, watch out, you don't trigger the mods.
That's right.
Because they do have fail.
That's right.
Oh gosh.
So it happens. It happens. People moderate with different. Even within the same stream, people will have the different. So you got to because I moderate so many different channels. I got to in my mind switch to what stream am I on, and what's the style of moderation I need for this particular stream, for this channel. What's this streamer looking for? Like the number of different types of streams. Like if I go and moderate on, say, Daryl Lee's stream, I'll be very like the trolls and stuff. They're gone straight away, but I will leave things go, and just because sometimes people, it's interesting in the chat. Some people get very subtle with their comments. They're like having a go without having a go. They're like, there's like an innuendo in the chat, and sometimes you have to decipher: is that just me misinterpreting what they're saying, or are they really trying to have a go at the streamer without actually being obvious? And so you start looking for their next response to see if there's a pattern. And sometimes you find that pattern, you're going, oh, I see what you're doing. And so you either sometimes you want to call stuff out too as a moderator, like in the chat, like we call out spamming a lot, so people who are in the chat know that that's not on. But then sometimes if someone's saying something like really inappropriate, sometimes you just want to quietly remove them because you don't want it to distract from the stream. And
you don't want to draw attention to what they were saying, because the second you do, everyone scrolls back like, what did they say?
Yeah.
It's like the train wreck scenario. Everyone's got to come back and check and see what it was. Leanne has another question for you. Leanne has recently been modded, and so she's learning some awesome modding tools. Leanne's asking, do you rate greeting those that come into the chat as a mod? If, for example, the streamer misses them coming in. I know as a viewer, I do like being greeted in by the streamer or one of the mods.
I think that's a great thing to do. I'm not always the best at it myself. Especially in a stream where you've got a lot of people coming in. When it's a smaller stream, it's a lot more manageable. I think if you have more than one mod, you could maybe somebody's on the lookout for that stuff. Depending if you have different roles within the mod group. But if it's just like, well, whoever's there just needs to take responsibility for that. I think if that's the community too, what's the vibe of the community? I don't like Nick Nimmer's stream. We've got like people when he goes live, it goes from 0 to a couple of hundred people very quickly. So it's very hard to greet everyone coming in. But what I try and do is grab the people. Because people start tagging me because they know me, and so if they tag me, I'm definitely jumping on them straight away. And then in that sort of volume, it's hard to make sure that everybody is greeted. But I think in the smaller communities, I think that's a really good thing to do, and I need to do better at it myself. That's something I need to improve on. I'll say hi to people, say hi to me, or if I recognise them as a returning person that hey, I've had, a regular interaction with in past chats.
You see their name like previous, like we've just had Russ. So just to prove a point, we've just had Russie jump in. Hey, Russie, she was here last week as well.
And
Russie likes to have an introduction as well. I think it's polite if you can. On these smaller streams, you can absolutely do it, but on the larger streams, like the Nick Nimmin stream, I can't imagine Nick trying to say hello to everybody.
Yeah. Because you see him at the start of his stream, he's jumping in the chat and just hitting the names that jump out at him in and maybe rattling off about half a dozen really quickly.
And it's like it feels
coming in.
Like you always like feel a bit special if he's like managed to grab your name, because there's 300 people and he's just quickly rattling off. So it's definitely one of those trickier things, and I think that's a great job for a mod. To be able to, like, where possible, to be able to say hi to people because sometimes, like in our instance, we're having a discussion and saying hi to everybody. It's like when you're having a conversation with people and someone just walks up and jumps in and you're just like, oh, hello. It's not a bad thing, but it's just like, oh, it's a break in the conversation. Whereas if your mods are doing it for you, people feel like they're being included, which you absolutely want. And you can continue on the discussion. And then when the questions come in, you can start focusing on those. That was a great question, Leanne.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting.
That was a really good
I
question.
hadn't even considered that. I know that, like, in Nick's streams, you've got a couple of people who aren't mods, but they say hello to every single person coming in, and you're just like, oh, I don't need to do that today because somebody else is doing it.
I think it's good. I think that whole question has only come on my radar fairly recently. It's not something that I had considered, but I can see how important that is, particularly in a group setting where you're building a community by your live stream. So that is something that's very important. I think that's something, if that can come down from the streamer as something that's like one of their core values is, hey, I want to greet as many people as try and greet everybody as they come in. I think that's something that the mod should definitely take on, particularly if that's the vibe of the community and that's the way the stream is going. That's the vibe the streamer wants. It's harder to do in those bigger streams when you've got the volume coming in to make sure you get everyone. But if you can, the other thing is there's so many people lurking too. I'll try and encourage people who are lurking, like on my live stream. If there's people lurking, I'll say, hey, if you're one of these people who are lurking, make sure you say hi so we can say hi back.
That's right. So we know you're there. Absolutely.
Because in my streams, as a streamer, I try and shout everybody out as they come in.
Yeah.
Where possible. So it's sort of like an extension on that. It's the whole greeting thing. Makes people feel a part of the stream. Makes people feel part of the community.
Yeah. It's and I look. I know, having chatted with you a few times, Doug, building community is an important thing for you. And you have to, like any other part of our YouTube journeys, you have to think about what is your end goal. Because like if your end goal is not to build communities, there's things that you don't need to do and you can focus on something else. But if your end goal is to build community, you need to build a rapport with the people who are there, because that's how you build a community, is to converse with those people. And I noticed in your Saturday night live streams, well, it's Saturday night for me, but Saturday morning,
Saturday sometime
during Saturday.
So depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah. You're very good at making sure everybody who is in that live stream feels included. And I think that's one of the reasons why I started watching your streams, was that if I had questions, you would answer them and you would include everybody. And I think that's a really important skill to have as a live streamer. It's obviously a lot harder to do if you're not live streaming. So
it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I think it's important to do that, especially when you can do it, because the size of the amount of people coming in your stream, if you can hit every question in the chat, because that's the volume allows that, because you've only have certain amount of people in your chat, like you might have 20 people or 30 people or 50 people. That's manageable. Yeah. So if you can learn to do that, like when you're smaller, if you grow bigger to like a larger chat, it may no longer be possible. You might need to bring in tools to like have people submit questions, because you don't necessarily want them to have to super chat to get your attention, although it's nice as a streamer. You want to open up, like Nick does, has a Q&A form to put the question in, and even then he gets so many questions in that he doesn't even get to all those, and and
then you still have people in the chat like dropping questions and people super chatting and just prioritizing.
And that's where the mods come in with the questions in the chat. You know that Nick's probably not going to get to them, so if you know the answer, as a moderator, I'm going to jump in and answer it, because I know Nick's not going to see it because they haven't submitted in the form, they haven't sent it on super chat, and the chat's scrolling so quickly, he's unlikely to see it.
Absolutely.
Unless he's like, particularly, this is the section of the show where I'm looking at the chat and pulling out questions.
Yeah.
That's very hard to do in that volume. So learning to do that early on and picking out the questions early whilst you're smaller, it does help not only with, as you say, with building community. And I think quite honestly, building a community should be a part of every channel. And I think
agree.
live streaming is one of the best ways. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a community tab, of course, but live streaming, that's how you stay in contact. It's the people who are like your diehard who'll come in on your live stream. Not everybody likes live streams for different reasons. They want the quick content. They want to come in, get the answers, and go. But then there's the hardcore people.
That's the advantage of doing both. Yeah.
Your hardcore people of the community, and that's the people that come in the live streams a lot of the time, and people who interact and see your questions and polls and comments and stuff come up on the community tab. They're the people who jump in and maybe respond or comment as well, respond to a poll, do all those different things. They're people who are in your community on the platform on YouTube. And then there's a whole plethora of things like Patreon, which is like the extension of that community, whether it's channel memberships and different things like that. But I think some aspect of community has to be there, whether you're a how-to channel or an entertainment channel, or if you're a business, say you're a business and it's just like a business, if you can build some community there as well,
if you don't
I think that can be helpful.
Community behind your business, then people are just going to look at you as a hard seller, and I don't like being hard sold to you. I don't know about you, Doug. I was actually watching Shelley Saves and Dane Golden were chatting this morning on their live stream, and they're actually talking about exactly that, about how you've got to put the you into it, not what you can get out of it. You need to help people with their purchasing decision or their problem or whatever, not, I'm going to recommend this thing because I get a bigger commission. Does that thing solve their problem? Yeah, maybe not. That's building a trust with your community. Like, I'm looking at some of the names in here, and I think pretty well all of these names from various places that I hang out on the internet. Drussie has a question for us.
Yes.
I read it and I'm like, oh, it depends. For me, it depends. Russie has asked, I'm supposed to go on an interview with another channel, get the questions first, right?
That's interesting, because this one is totally, I had no idea what we're going to talk about. I just knew it was around live video, YouTube, live streaming. I knew that you'd probably ask me about moderation and stuff. So it's sort of, I knew what the stream was about, so that was enough for me. But I can see that could be helpful for some people who are going on, and maybe it's a controversial topic, so you might want to certain things you don't want to talk about. Because you asked me before the stream, is there anything that I don't want to talk about? And I'm like, no, I can't think of anything.
So for me, it's like, if I'm going in blind, like I've not watched any of their content, I don't know what their stuff is, I will get in there and try and watch some stuff and work out what kinds of questions and the feeling of their previous interviews, and at least get like a rough idea. So when I sent out the request on the link for Doug, on there it had like I'm going to ask questions about live streaming and your live streaming journey and live video in your business. So it gave like a rough, totally like probably useless, but a rough idea of the conversation topic. So rather than having because I do have a list of questions here, but I also like to keep it open to what appears in the chat as well, to try and to keep it moving. So it depends for me. But if it's someone you don't know and you haven't built a trust with them, I think I'd like some information.
Yeah, I sent out an invitation to someone for an interview yesterday, and so I basically in that did what you did, is where I basically said I want to talk about these topics. I think I was like 3 topics or something. So I gave him like the base idea, because we could end up talking about, their lifestyle, their their travels, or their what the dog ate for breakfast, or different things like that. But I was saying, no, well, this is going to be about this, and it's a bit like asking for a collab for someone. Yeah, so hey, do you want to have a collab? You want to basically say, hey, I want to do a collaboration where I want to do this, this, and this, and then so we make a video about this, or we do a live stream about that, where there's some sort of idea where they know when you're inviting them that you've got a plan. As long as you can show that you've got a basic plan or something to go with. I think for a video you might need a little bit more nutted out, but for a live stream, say, hey, it's an interview and we're going to discuss these topics. I think if you've got that, then I'll have some confidence, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's a great answer. Doug, it is time. It is.
Wow.
It is.
It goes.
It went. We were discussing at the start. It was like, oh, if we get to a point where we've got no more questions, we'll just call it early. But we've gone over. But
that's fine.
Doug, in the description below, I've got a couple of links for you. Where would you like people to come and look? Which of your particular channels, socials, would you like people to go?
I think my primary channel, Doug Hewson YT, as seen right there below me.
Yeah.
On the name tag, that's my primary channel. So that's probably the place to get me on YouTube. I do have a couple of side channels that I'm going. One's just a shorts version of my channel where I just put my shorts and clips, but I haven't done any clips yet. So one day we'll do some clips. And then I've got a tech review channel, which is basically tech geared for creators. And so that one started, that's called Creator Tech Reviews. And it's basically unboxings, product reviews. So things like my microphone, for example. I could talk about this particular microphone. Maybe my lights or my peripherals on my computer, different things. Anything that involves tech that creators would use. Yeah. And so I think I even did one when I got my iPhone 13 Pro. I did one.
Did you do one on your MX keys? I think I could have sworn I saw a video on your MX keys.
Yeah, my MX keys.
Because you sold me.
Yeah, I think that was that the unboxing? That was the unboxing.
It might have been an unboxing. Yeah.
Most of my stuff's unboxings because I sometimes don't get around to then reviewing them later, because when you unbox them, you can give your first impressions.
Yeah.
But after time, if stuff breaks quickly, then you maybe want to come back and say, it lasted me a few months and then it broke. But yeah, speaking of this, this has lasted me ages. I've had this for well over.
I'm a keyboard killer, and so far mine still looks new, and it's 8 months in.
That's great.
Tomorrow, sometime, if you go and look on Doug Hewson YT, he already has his live stream for Saturday already set up and ready to go.
Yes.
That is a collaborative effort between Doug and myself. I get to be a regular guest or co-host. For the Check My Channel, which is where we do channel reviews. So you come in, we use the StreamYard tool and choose people at random in the chat who've opted in, and we'll go through and have a good look at your channel and give our first impressions on what we think. And it's also a bit of fun, and that goes for about an hour or so.
We do it for about an hour because we're on there right before nickname, and so it's like if you're in the States, it's like around 8 a.m. Eastern. It's with the time changes, I scheduled it wrong yesterday and I had to fix it.
Okay. I haven't checked it.
It's about 10 around just before 10 p.m. Australian Eastern time.
So it's basically 12 hours after my usual Freaky. So yeah, Freaky's just asking same time as this live, but no, this was at 11:30 a.m. Our time, and the other one's at 10 p.m. our time. So if you go over and check his channel, it'll show you your local time.
Yeah, bright and early for the US people.
Yes.
8 a.m. Eastern. So if you're on the West Coast, no chance. It's like you'll still be in bed.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you're in Europe, beautiful. It'll be like your mid to late morning, and you'll be able to join us. We have people coming in from all over the world on those streams. People from Belgium, UK, the US, us here in Australia, Asia, India, all over the world.
It's a good time frame, that one.
Yeah.
Except for us. That's all right. I like the nighttime. Doug, it has been so much fun having you on, and I'm so glad that you could join us. And I will see you tomorrow.
You will. Thank you for having me on the stream. Thanks for everybody in the chat. I did in the middle of the questions there. I forgot that there was even a chat there, so I must apologize. As a moderator, that sounds really bad. But
that's terrible.
But it was
moderation.
Just so, it was like so the questions were flowing and the answers were flowing and yeah, it's a great interview. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm
so
glad. And we will catch you all in 2 weeks. I believe we have Tiffany Lee Bymaster, also known as Coach Glitter, jumping in to be a special guest on this live stream in a couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And we will see you all next time. Bye for now.